Victor, it's taken us probably 6 years of knowing each other to finally do a podcast together, but I'm glad that we're finally making this happen.
Dude,
Thanks
so
for joining.
excited. So excited.
So I want to start actually with how we met, which was back in the day at Conscious Capitalism.
Yeah.
And one of the things that struck me about you is just how much that resonated with you and how much you really understood the importance of both capitalism and the principles of capitalism and living them out as a leader from the get-go. So so what does capitalism mean for you? And when we talk about advancing the principles of
Yeah.
capitalism, what does that mean for you?
Yeah, it's so funny, and we're entering this crazy time, which I love. I love the work you guys are doing. Where right, if the society veers in the wrong way, we're going to have this stigma around capitalism because of some bad actors, right, and some edge
Hmm.
players. But at the core, right, for me, what capitalism is, it is the most efficient way for us to elevate humankind to a higher state, right? It is proven to be the best engine for innovation. When it's done well, it's the best engine for uplifting employees and yes, shareholders, of course, but also employees and delivering better technology for customers. And if it's done right, even right, moving the society forward, right, in positive ways. And so, yeah, I think it's the engine that has to continue to thrive. And yeah, just gotta make sure that like some bad actors on the fringe don't bring it down, basically. Yeah,
And unfortunately, the bad actors get most of the attention, not just
they
in the
do.
media, but even in the business world to try and avoid. So
They
I
do.
really appreciate that you've been committed to not being one of those and to working with others who are the good actors there.
Yeah.
And before this, you were telling me that actually there might be some companies that people don't necessarily associate with that who are leading the edge with this, like from your time at Microsoft back in the day.
Yes. No. So my very first job coming out of college, I was a young little punk kid coming out of college. And at the time, this was back, I'll date myself now. So I graduated in 1993. And at the time I had one target company. I was like, I want to go. At that time, I was actually a coder. I went to business school, but I had a coding background, and I just loved computers. I love software. And I was like, that's the company I want to go work for. I was lucky enough to get into Microsoft. Funny enough, not even through the recruiting process, like they declined me in the standard on-site recruiting. I sent them a binder like this big of all the code I had written as a kid, and I got like a completely separate internship path. Which my friends were like, "How did you do that?" And I was like, "I don't know." but yeah, for those that don't know, Microsoft back in the day, I mean, it was the Google. I mean, it was actually what's cool is it's now back to the top of the one of the top right tech companies. But
They're killing
back
it
then,
though.
it was like nothing. It was like Microsoft right, was the de facto. And when I got there in '93, that was my first work experience, of course, and I was just blown away by how well they treated the employees there. Like Microsoft had probably the first big campus, right, with all these buildings and the recreational areas and the subsidized food and stock, right, to everyone all the way down to the admin. They had admins that became multimillionaires, right, because they were part of the equity rise. And my one comment was like, yeah, it set that baseline of like, yes, you need to treat your employees really, really well. They will do amazing things. So I love that employee ethos, but they could only do that because they were a strong, viable company, right? It was a very profitable business. And so they were able to allocate, right, the dollars to have a more broad stakeholder view, which I loved. So yeah, I don't think people think of Microsoft necessarily as an employee-centric company, but I think to this day it is. Like people absolutely love working there, and they do treat their employees well.
And what I love about what you're emphasizing here is that for a lot of people, they think treating your employees well means you don't really care about profit or you don't care about
Yeah,
making money.
yeah,
But that's actually the critical component to being able to treat
yes,
employees, customers, and everyone else well. You need a
yeah,
viable economic engine to power
yes.
all of that.
That's right. That is, I tell people the hardest job of a CEO, because I bet this is my third CEO run. The hardest job of a CEO is balancing these stakeholders because you do want to treat your employees well, right? That will it requires a vibrant business and profit streams, right? If you do things that just damage the business, then the whole thing spirals down. You go bankrupt. There's no jobs, right? And so you're constantly playing this balance of right. How do I keep the whole system in balance and vibrant? And unfortunately, you get people that are just too narrowly focused, where they'll just like look at one little sliver and just point a finger, and it's like, no, it's really a hard job. It's right. Yeah. getting a business to succeed and thrive and actually deliver against the stakeholders, right? It's if it were easy, yeah, if it was just super easy and you could just click a button, then everybody would do it. But yeah, at the core, you got to have a vibrant business for sure.
And a lot of people try it and fail at that, unfortunately, because it is so tough. But as you said, you're on your third CEO gig now, and you've really ridden the roller coaster and worked with businesses of a lot of sizes. So let's move into both what you're working on right now and what your journey's been to get to Emovid today.
Yeah, it's funny. I tell people that I was not. If you asked me, 10 years ago, if I would be doing a start, because I did a startup in the first .com bubble, right in 1999. Very bad timing. I left left Microsoft like the peak of the stock market. Some other Microsoft guys. We raised money. We pulled a bunch of people out of places like Goldman Sachs, and then the market just cratered in I think it was April of 2000. So we kind of had to slog through the post first bubble collapse, but I don't regret it because my journey, kind of going back to my arc, because I always knew I wanted to be a CEO of a software business. I'm passionate about technology. I love software. So I was just on this learning journey over the years of just accumulating knowledge and running a startup. Understanding the dynamics of a startup was a key learning piece for me, which is because it's very different, right? Running a $1 billion channel versus like a brand new team, completely different. But no, it's got parallels to today. So I traverse. I had multiple CEO roles. The AI wave that's coming, in my mind, will be bigger than the internet wave in terms of the downstream business and social impacts, societal impacts, just how we operate as human beings, right? Because when the internet, if you think of the internet at its core, it's actually very simple in some ways, which is I call it ubiquitous connectivity. We just put the whole world on the same network, right, and made it universally accessible, which is it's a big deal, but
it took a lot to get there.
It took a lot to get there, and we're still grappling with what that means in terms of what products can be built. But we have untapped what intelligence is, and it's still the earliest days of that, right? We will have intelligence as a service. We already have it. We have intelligence as a service available, right? We will have the top 99th percent of capability of any knowledge worker available for fractional pennies relative to what they cost today, pervasively available, right? And the impact of there's nothing that I think has come close to that in terms of humanity, right? How we interact with technology. So long story short,
which is also a fairly simple concept, but is going to have radical implications for the way the world works and for what we're able to do.
Yeah, no, absolutely. So yeah, so it's I'm doing a new startup. It's I call it an AI company, but we have this interesting anti-AI stance. So at the very highest level, Emovid, what we're solving for is in this world of AI, because now we have untapped intelligence, the digital communications that we use day to day in business are no longer trusted, right? I get an email from you, from your email account, Alexander, and I'm like, that's a nice bot written mail, or maybe that maybe that paragraph was created by an AI. And even video now with things like Sora, right? You can go text to a video, and for an average person, they might not know that that's right, not you. Hopefully I'll be able to tell the difference, because I'm like, no, that's like a weird version of Alexander still. But we're at the point now where digital communication is no longer trusted. And so that's what we've solved out of Emovid, which is how do you maintain verified, authentic, this is Victor, this is his voice, it's his expression, it's his tone, in a platform that we're kind of introducing to the world in various ways. So that's what we're working on.
Which is really exciting. I want to dig into that in a moment, but let's make a comparison between when you were starting a company during the .com bubble back in the late 90s, early 2000s, and what you're doing right now. First off, are you worried that we're in an AI bubble right now as well, like what you saw back in the day with the .com bubble? Is a lot of people
no, there definitely are, like, I'll call it maybe pockets of bubbles, or maybe even big bubbles that are brewing, but it's just the inevitable arc of capitalism, actually. It's a great statistic. I wish I knew it off the top of my head, but when the railroads came through, as an example, the number of railroad company, it was some insane number. I want to say there were like thousands of railroad companies that spawned. I mean, there was a huge railroad bubble. Like, people were like, oh my God, we cannot. And of course it all dissolved. So every major technological wave, it's just, there is an inefficiency that comes from the capitalist system, but you could argue maybe it's not efficient because there is a revolution and change, and right, capital comes in, the best wins. It's kind of the survival of the fittest. It's like a little mini evolutionary process around that new technology. You're going to have winners, you're going to have losers. It creates a little mini bubble. Yeah, we're absolutely in that today. There are companies that I'm sure will not exist, but there's going to be some monsters that get created right out of this, and that process is going to continue. So
Which
yeah,
is
no,
what
there's a ton of
happened before
parallels
as
from the
well.
first .com bubble for sure.
Hmm.
I think one huge difference that I see is the speed and pace at which a startup can run is so fast compared to back then. In many ways, because of AI and the systems and the tools and all of these services that are available, like the ability for an individual to ideate something and then have it come to an experience that an end user or customer can actually play with is so fast, especially in
Can you give it?
software.
Can you give an example? Like, what's something that you're just going at lightning speed today compared to what you were doing back in '99?
Yeah, no, and I'll tie this back to this idea of intelligence as a service. So it's just a tactical one. This was actually when we first started. Um, uh, we had this question mark of, hey, like if you're going to use a product like Emovid, there are lots of complex ways you could use it. It really varies depending on your workflow, right, and your business. And so pre-AI, a company would have solved that by saying, okay, well, how do I build like maybe I build a little widget or a little recommendation engine, and I figure out your company and I make this map. And like that would have taken, 3 months if you could even solve it. It was like a very hard problem to solve. In a world of intelligence as a service, we said, oh, well, why don't we just make a call to OpenAI and say, here's my business, here's Emovid, how can I use it? And the answer comes out from the intelligence that we can then package up right into a view. Simple example of literally something. I mean, I think we pushed that out in like a day, versus what would have been 6 months. Who knows if we could have even built it, right? As an example. So yeah, this idea of interjecting intelligence as a service into offerings is going to be incredibly, I mean, you're starting to see it in lots of places, incredibly powerful.
So after your startup in the early '90s, you did go on and become a CEO again at evite.com,
Yep.
and I'm really curious what that process was like to become CEO there, and what it was like building it up before. But then I also need to ask, why go back into startup mode after running such a sizable, impactful company?
Yeah, no, it's excuse me. Evite was my second CEO role. So I ran, if you remember Ophoto, it's bought by Kodak, called Kodak Gallery. So that was my very first CEO stint. And I did that for about 4 years. And that got sold to Shutterfly. So I got high. I didn't found Evite. I came in. Evite was actually founded 20 plus years ago, 1998, I want to say. So it was one of the original kind of OG
They
web
made it
brands,
through.
and it made it. Yeah, it was one of the few that made it through. I was brought on board as a hired gun CEO to basically do a turnaround because it had started to decline at that point in time, mainly because it had been neglected from a product.
Mm.
From a pure product experience perspective, just basic things didn't work. The website, the mobile web didn't work. The apps didn't work. I was like, how is this business even remotely alive at this point in time? And so we, over the course of, I ran it for, I think, 7 or 8 years. We stabilized the curve. We stopped what I call it the MySpace slide. So we kind of fixed it, and it was no crazy cocktail of work. It was just listen to what the customers are complaining about and fix those things. I mean, it literally was as simple as running the Net Promoter Engine. And then we started to grow it. We got it to profitability, break even. COVID hit, which created, of course, an existential threat. And yeah, long story short, we ended up pulling Evite. Some investors, myself, pulled it out of the holding company. And so, yeah, it's still vibrant and healthy today and run by a great friend who's the peak revenue, peak usage at this point in time. But no, going back to your question of why do a startup, what drives me just personally as an exec, it comes back to this idea of principled business, which is I want there to be more principled leaders in business that are thinking more broadly about their stakeholders, that are doing the balance correctly, and they're just icons, not these bad examples that all the press points to, but just icons of like, oh, yes, you can build a vibrant, robust, capitalist, profitable business, and you can do that in a way that is responsible. And so that's my long-term goal. And it was clear to me that one of the best ways to do that in this, oh, thank you, in this time of AI was to do that around AI, because it is going to be the biggest sea change. And so, yeah, I thought about, do I go join a bigger company? I'm like, no, if I can, there's literally a moment at a high level is like, how do you take all this amazing intelligence and service capability, right? But apply it in a way that is good for, creates a good business, but is good for the society, good for humanity, right? Increases connection.
I love it, especially since, as you said, you're using AI as a tool here to kind of counter the negative effects of AI,
Yes,
where we're
yes,
interacting with machines and non-humans, and you're looking to
yes,
build relationships with people through
yes.
video communication and,
Yeah,
and having AI help with
that's
this.
exactly right. It is, this is where I love contradictions. It is, it is using AI to offset some AI and enhance human. I've been all about human connection. Like all of my last, actually all 3 CEO roles were about memories or people connecting in parties. The way I think about our current world is there's a clear, like simple frameworks. There's a clear split of what I call relational interactions in business and transactional interactions. Today, these are all kind of blended together in how we interact. Like if you looked at your email stream today, how you use it, it's a mix of both, right? Some of these things are very transactional. It's like, hey, let's have a podcast time. Like, could that be done with my agent talking to your agent? And do we care if it's an AI? No. It's like, yes, that can get much more efficient. But there is a subset of communication that's critical for business that builds, where you need to either build trust or you need confirmation and verification that this is actually a human being. And those, I call those kind of the relational or kind of validated human experiences or interactions. That's what we're solving for with our product. So it's super important from my perspective, because we can't, there are entrepreneurs that are scaling companies that have gotten a lot of money, and literally if you talk to them, their vision is, oh, well, we can just get rid of people talking to each other and have all of our agents just talk to each other. And my perspective is, no, that won't work. That can work for a subset of things.
Right,
You
there's
can't
some
replace
things
the
that we
deep
want to,
connection.
some things like you said, scheduling and other
Yeah.
minutia we do want to get rid of, so we can have deeper conversations and relationships with each other.
Yes, exactly. My hope is exactly we get this efficiency, and we spend more and more time in face-to-face interactions, which I love what you guys are doing with Liberty Ventures and in person, right? In person meetings, Zoom meetings, right? Anything that gets you face-to-face. Emovid gets you face-to-face, but asynchronously in a very powerful way. Like these things, I think, are where we should be spending most of our time as business execs.
So this sounds really good. Do you have any case studies yet of people who have utilized Emovid's technology to actually build those relationships up, and then, of course, as you said it from the outset, to develop their economic model to be able to support everyone and to live out their principles as well?
Yeah, no, we've got thousands of videos flowing through companies' accounts, all the way from small to large. Actually, one that just got off the phone literally before our chat. One of the NPR public radio satellite offices is using us to great effect for fundraising. Right, if you think about their world, they got decimated because their funding got cut, and so they had to, in order to survive, right, they needed to cultivate these deep relationships with their donor, like higher end donors, right, donations, etc. And so they're using Emovid to build those and cultivate those relationships. And they were raving about it on the call of like, this is helping us effectively stay alive as a business. So as a as a kind of big whale, kind of high dollar fundraising platform, that's just one tactical example. But yeah, for sure.
And an incredibly important one.
Yeah, yeah. I will say, ourselves, like I used it for a Movid. We took no venture capital, so we just raised our seed round. That was a $5 million round, predominantly based on the power of using a Movid asynchronously to build these deeper relationships and trust with people, as opposed, I'm also an advisor and I'm on some boards for some startups. And like, I see these entrepreneurs like throwing out a deck. They're like, oh, here's my long deck. Here's my text. You can tell it's partially AI written. They're like, hey, I'm like, what are you doing? Like, you're not going to build any connection that way, right? Like you have to build personal connection, right, in order to get things done at that level of trust, or trust is needed.
So, if you're willing to share this with anyone who's raising right now that might be interested in this, how can they use Emovid to actually to help with that? Like just send a video from the outset reaching out to someone, or to explain what the company's doing, basically give the pitch on video when they're
Yeah.
emailing this? How do you use that?
Yeah, no, the simple way I describe it is you don't want to use video as the cold call first touch, because that is the equivalent of like showing up on someone's door and knocking on it, which is actually quite intrusive. And so again, we get a lot of companies who just want to purely prospect with the video, and I say, no, don't do that. That's actually a bad idea. You need some connection. But the minute you have that connection and you have the second interaction, my simple way of thinking about it is I call it the magic wand of being in person, which is, if you could wave a magic wand and put the person in front of you, would you do it so that you could have that interaction? And if so, then you want to do face-to-face Zoom or Emovid. And if you wouldn't, because it's like such a tactical thing that it would just be a waste of your time and that person's time, then yeah, use email, use something else, right? But yeah, a big pitch deck with like why you're an interesting company, that clearly would be something you want to deliver, right, with the power of your expression, your emotion, your voice, the trust. You want people to know that's not some AI regurgitated summary of your business, right? That's my short answer is wave the magic wand and putting the person in a chair next to you. And when do you want to use that magic wand? I use it a ton. I use it a ton.
I actually love the way that you also ordered that too. Obviously, face-to-face, in-person interactions are the best for us
The
for
best,
developing
yes.
relationships.
Yes.
And then having a live conversation like what we're doing right now using Riverside, we're able to interact with each other. That's
Yes.
awesome. But it's tough to schedule. You might not even get someone's time, and everyone thinks that
Yes.
needs to be 30 minutes, and it doesn't. So having Emovid as a way to have those emotions and this kind of connection asynchronously in
Yes.
a shorter bite is a great third step in there that is so much stronger than email.
That's right.
That is
And it can be used in
I can
lots
see
of
that.
different ways, right? A lot of times it's a precursor to getting a face-to-face meeting, because now you're like, if you don't have it, you're going from like, let me spam you with a bunch of transactional emails and hope I can get a meeting with you. Like, that's a big gap. But if you can have a back and forth, one of the great things about videos, if you have a back and forth and can see the person, even if it's not real time, you start to build that trust and connection in a way that
100%.
other formats don't. Yeah, no, that's right. Yeah, the other issue is just the scalability of it. It's like right now I have probably 100 deep relationship building threads going with executives. Like, I've never had that before. Like I don't have 100 meetings in a week, right? But I can have 100 interactions that are building trust, right? At this kind of building up towards better relationships. So my mind's still grappling with the power of that. It's I call it like a super amplification power of your ability to have deeper relationships, which is kind of a crazy thought, but it's true.
It is.
But it's
phenomenal.
True. Yeah.
Awesome. Well, Victor, I really appreciate you taking the time to share this with the network. And before we get going, is there anything else that you would really want to impart to the investors, executives, or entrepreneurs in the Liberty Ventures Network?
Yeah, no, it's just I think the key message that I'm pushing is this idea: you will be tempted to see these AI systems that are pushing efficiency. And yes, there are some great efficiencies to be had, but in my mind, one of the most important first filters is like, are you thinking about these relational interactions versus your transactional? And are you doing something to damage those relational interactions in your search for efficiency? And if so, that's probably the wrong trade-off. So I think that'd be my core message. Efficiency only gets you so far. Yeah.
Victor, thank you for building Emovid. Thank you for being a principal business leader, and thank you for taking the time to share this with the rest of the network.
Oh no,
So
appreciate
you
it.
and everything that you're doing.
Oh no, appreciate it. You guys have been great users and fans and supporters, and love what you guys are doing.
All right. Well, thanks so much. We'll do this again soon.
Absolutely. Thanks, Alexander.